You are watching Tech and AI Live. Now we have a great presentation coming up with Adam Cheyer, who is the co-founder of Siri. His presentation is titled Artificial Intelligence Beyond All Expectations. Adam has helped start 4 successful companies. He's the co-founder of Siri, which was sold to Apple to build the Siri Assistant, the co-founder of Viv Labs, which was sold to Samsung, and the technology is now on hundreds of millions of devices. He is also the co-founder of Sentient, a pioneering machine learning company, and founding member of Change.org, the world's largest petition platform. Welcome, Adam. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Catherine. Happy to be here.
No, thank you. So why don't we get going with your presentation, because I know we've got a lot to cover today.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, my name's Adam Cheyer. My talk will be on Beyond Expectations. I've been working professionally in artificial intelligence for over 30 years now. And for years, I thought I knew where it was going. Every year, AI would get a little bit better. But something happened about 10 years ago that was just shocking to me. I say that in the past 10 years, AI has produced results I never thought I would see in my lifetime. So literally, as progress was going, the hockey stick happened, and stories, things that I couldn't imagine occurred. And I want to share some of those stories with you today. So it's my story. I get to tell the story. So I'm going to start where I like. February 10th, 2010. On this day, a small app was launched in the App Store, and it was called Siri, your personal assistant. You could just talk to it, and it would do all sorts of things like call a taxi for you. We didn't have Uber yet back in 2010. You could book a restaurant, buy tickets to the Warriors game tonight or whatever. And so this app was launched, one of 2 million apps in the App Store, and reviews started to come in. Now, one of the reviews was something I'm very proud of. A guy named Steve, he wrote that Siri is my favorite app of all time. Now, this is not just any Steve. This is Steve Wozniak. He's a co-founder of Apple. He's not only the co-founder, he's a fanboy of Apple products. He stands in line. He'll tell you what he thinks. If you ask him today, what's your favorite app that you've ever used? He will say Siri, but not the Siri that's in our iPhones today, the original app. And as a founder, that just makes me so happy, because we put so much love, so much thought into this original version of Siri. So a tiny startup launches an app, people start to use it and like it. Apparently Steve Wozniak was not the only Steve to try it. A few weeks later, we get a phone call. Our CEO on his iPhone gets a phone call, and we hear a voice. Hey, it's Steve. What you doing? Want to come over to my house tomorrow? And we're like, Steve Jobs is calling our office? First question, how'd you get this number? Because we were a stealth company. We were secret, no website, no phone number, no address on the website. And yet Steve Jobs called us out of the blue. He invited us to his house, the 3 co-founders, Doug Kitlaus, myself, and Tom Gruber. We talked about the future, about technology. He made it clear he wanted to buy our company. And we said, thank you, not interested, goodbye. And we left. True story. But that wasn't the end of the story, obviously. Steve and Scott Forstall came back about a month later. They convinced us they understood our vision, our big vision. They would help us support it, and we would try to go forward. And we decided to go in with Apple to try to change the world with Siri. So a year, or actually a few months after Siri was acquired by Apple, Steve Jobs was interviewed by Walt Mossberg as part of the All Things Digital conference, episode 8. And Walt Mossberg asked, Steve, why did you buy Siri, that search company? And Steve said something very interesting. He said, they're not a search company. Siri is an AI company. And in 2010, no one knew what he meant. So if you think about it, literally the 10 years before that phrase, nobody used the words artificial intelligence. It just was not in vogue. Really, in the 90s and in the 2000s, no one spoke about AI on a big stage at a major conference. But just like Steve Jobs basically took ideas and brought them to the masses in completely changing many fields. So he did that with the mouse and Windows. He didn't invent them, but he brought them to the world with the Apple computers. He did this for movies with Pixar, with music with the iPods, for mobile with the iPhone. Just like this, Steve Jobs, I believe, was one of the first to see the impact that AI would have. And he said, Siri is not a search company, they're an AI company. And everyone was a little bit, what is this artificial intelligence? But from that statement, from that date, all of a sudden, like a drip, drip, drip of a dam that's about to break, AI started to appear everywhere. And not just little bits of AI, crazy, surprising moments. So the first that shocked me was in January 2011, IBM Watson, a program, played the world's best humans in Jeopardy. Now, Jeopardy is a very cultural game. It's asking questions about knowledge of all sorts of fields, of history, of literature, and the questions are asked in natural language. And I go, well, maybe you could build some search engine or something. But IBM Watson was not just a search engine. It wasn't just retrieving information that was already written down. When I heard Watson respond to a Jeopardy question saying Batman and Robin Hood, I go, oh my God, that phrase, Batman and Robin Hood, has probably never been written down before. And yet it was the appropriate answer to synthesize to answer that question. It blew my mind. I never thought I would see a system able to reason about our culture in such a broad way through natural language and synthesize new answers. Literally, that was incredible for me. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. So that's January 2011. October 2011, Apple releases the version of Siri that you know and love. This was the advertising that came out on that day. Siri, your wish is its command. And it came with the iPhone 4S. Now, this was not just a parlor trick. This was a major feature, and it had huge implications for Apple's business. The next 6 months for Apple were the two best quarters in technology history. Apple shattered every previous record for a technology company for profit margins, for sales, gross margins. It was exploding, just selling the iPhone 4S, which frankly was just the iPhone 4 plus Siri. And with that, Apple's stock almost doubled, and Apple passed Exxon to become the #1 most valuable market cap company in history of all time. So, and a single AI feature propelled a company to become the most valuable in history. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. December 2013, Google, they're just a search company at this time. They acquire 8 robot companies. I'm like, what does this mean? What would Google do with robots? Here's just a little bit of a video from about that time. Boston Dynamics was one of the companies they bought. This is a great video. That, by the way, was not the head, it's the hand that you are seeing, as you'll see its use in this short clip. Now, is this something you'd like in your house, or is it a little too creepy? I'm not sure. Well, that looks pretty useful. I'll give you just a few more seconds. Nice, nice. So I'm gonna shoot a basket right here. Excellent score. Oh man, okay. Even though it's just wires and metal, I tend to feel a little bit of emotion when I see that poor robot slip on a banana peel. Okay, amazing. I never thought I would see wire and batteries move like that. October 2015, I'll tell a personal story. So I borrow my wife's car. I'm in the car with my 15-year-old son. Now he's a teen. He has, blase completely mastered. And I look over at him and I say, "Hey, Noah, would you like to see the greatest technology advance since the creation of Siri?" And I don't know about you, but in our household, that's a pretty big statement. And he goes, "Yeah, Dad, whatever." And I'm like, all right. So I'm driving my wife's car, which I've borrowed. We're on the highway coming up to a curve. And all of a sudden, I take my hands off the wheel and I go, "Ah." Oh. And Noah goes, "Dad, what are you doing?" And all of a sudden, the car navigates smoothly around the curve by itself. And he goes, "Dad, that's insane." And I'm like, yes, it is. And the craziest part, something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime, the car did not do that, did not drive by itself the day before. This was an over-the-air update that just kind of got loaded onto the car, and now it could drive on the highway by itself. Just insane, as my son so appropriately said. Never thought I would see that in my lifetime. March 2016. Now, everyone has heard that AI beat a human in 1996 in chess. Garry Kasparov, the world's chess champion, was defeated by Deep Blue from IBM. Well, in March 2016, a Google company called AlphaGo came out with software to try to play the world's best master at Go. Now, people are saying, chess, Go, what's the difference? The difference is the way that AI beat a human in chess was to just analyze billions, trillions of moves through brute force, just trying every single move, more or less. Did some optimizations. Well, that's possible in checkers or chess, but in Go, there's so many combinatoric possibilities, it just explodes. And every AI researcher thought that the scope, the space of possibilities was so vast that no computer would be able to play on a world champion level in our lifetimes, for sure. And yet, March 2016, AlphaGo faced Lee Sedol in a tournament and actually beat Lee. I think it was 4-2, and the world was shocked. And now, let me tell you the craziest part of that. AlphaGo Zero had been trained by using machine learning on every top human game available, ever played, basically. So the machine was able to learn what are the good moves, what are the strategies that to employ to be one of the world's best human level players. But then DeepMind created a version of AlphaGo called AlphaGo Zero with no prior knowledge, no human games to study. And from this initial state, they took 2 copies of it and played it one against another, back and forth, millions, billions, trillions of times. And AlphaGo Zero evolved its own intelligence. You could say almost an alien intelligence about how to play Go, because it had never gotten any insight from a human about what's a good move or what's a bad move. It figured it out itself. And it came up with, who knows, insights that we've never considered. No human has ever considered. Now, AlphaGo Zero has never played a human in a competition, but they tried AlphaGo Zero against the original AlphaGo version that beat the world's best human, or one of the world's best humans. And AlphaGo Zero won 100 games to nothing, 100 to 0. So this was an evolution of very narrow intelligence, but taking it so far beyond what humans can even comprehend. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. A few more. March 2017. For me, 2017 was the year that AI really started to be applied to cancer and healthcare in a number of different ways. So some researchers from Harvard and MIT took images for breast cancer, and using AI, were able to reduce false predictions of whether a potential tumor was benign or needed to be operated on by 30%. So an AI could predict, by looking at a radiogram, could predict more accurately than the best human whether surgery was needed. And this saves money, trauma, and obviously saves lives. June 2020, while we're sitting here locked in our houses with COVID, something happened in AI that was one of the craziest examples I've seen. It's called GPT-3 by a company named OpenAI. Now, let me explain quickly how it works. You know that on a phone, or you type a few words, it's going to try to predict what the next word might be. You've seen that in your email systems, etc. Well, what OpenAI did was they built a system like that given some series of words was able to predict the next word. And they trained it the largest model ever created in this world. They got as much text, they created billions of parameters, and they trained a machine learning model with an attention focus, so it could look back in the text, understand which words matter. And by using this transformer technology, they created GPT-3 that was able to predict the next word. But then they saw that this could be used to predict, the word after that and the word after that. And they started applying it, this general model that just learned what word is likely to come next. They tried it for translation. They wrote in French, the word flower is, and then asked it to predict it, and it would say fleur. And they're like, wow. They would say 6 plus 17 is, and the system would predict the next word is 23. And so they started applying it to all sorts of tasks, but some of the examples literally blew my mind. Here's a conversation where the question gets typed in, and then we ask for an answer, and it predicts the word and the next word. Look at this. It says, what is my favorite animal? My favorite animal is a dog. Okay, that's pretty good. Why? Because dogs are loyal and friendly. Now, this is pretty amazing response if you're just trying to predict the next word. How many eyes does a giraffe have? A giraffe has 2 eyes. How many legs does a frog have? Frog has 4 legs. Okay, I get it. It's probably written down somewhere. Are there any animals with 3 legs? No animals with 3 legs. Why don't animals have 3 legs? Animals don't have 3 legs because they would fall over. When I saw that, I was like, whoa, did it just understand physics? Now, it's not entirely accurate, but that level of, quote, common sense was completely unexpected in my what I was expecting. And then they tried to approach it with coding. So if you type in English something, it will generate and say, give me the code. It will predict word by word the symbols to write the program to do that. A button that looks like a watermelon, boom, it wrote a CSS style that looked like that. A button for every color of the rainbow. there's the code to do what you just asked for. I just was amazed. A table of the richest country in the world with column name, GDP, etc. And the same group then came out with something called DALL-E and DALL-E 2, the version, where you can now, instead of just generating the code, it will generate images. So let me give a few examples. I'm going to give you one. If I say an astronaut riding a horse, now this is not an image that has ever existed. You can start to imagine what it might look like in your mind. But then I followed up as a pencil drawing. This is what DALL-E 2 generated on its own. Pretty amazing, right? This image has never existed before. And if you had asked it in photorealistic style, you would have gotten this, something completely different. Wow, amazing. Let me give you another one. A rabbit detective sitting on a park bench and reading a newspaper in a Victorian setting. Can you imagine it? That's pretty good. And finally, one last one. This is a challenge for you all. A bowl of soup that looks like a monster knitted out of wool. Take a minute, try your mightiest to generate an image that meets that sentence. I think this is pretty darn extraordinary. Okay, so there's an example of some of what AI can do. These are just a few stories about, you know, how crazy AI has been getting. They're examples of things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. So that leads you to the question, what's next? And in particular, you know, do we need to be afraid? So in 2005, Ray Kurzweil wrote a book called The Singularity is Near, where he predicted that by 2029, AI would surpass human intelligence. And this caused a lot of stir. That's only 7 years away, by the way. So is this going to happen? Well, Stephen Hawking, when he was alive, said the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. If we were faced with an intelligence superior to ours, it could be troubling. Elon Musk piled on, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. So do we need to fear artificial intelligence? Let me give you just a few ideas and examples on this. So Catherine, you know, I've shown you all this amazing accomplishments, but the message that I have for you and for the people out there is that despite this almost eerie intelligence in these kind of narrow fields, no one has really solved general intelligence or consciousness. And I just want to close with one example of how I would explain it. So you know how, like, maybe you're using Siri and you interact and all of a sudden it says something kind of smart or surprising or funny. You go, whoa, is it intelligent? Or maybe you see DALL-E 2 generate a monster that looks like a bowl of soup. Is it intelligent? Is it smarter than me? You get this feeling. I'm here to say no. And let me give you an example. If I take this piece of duct tape, this is how I explain it to my son, and I kind of put it like this on my shirt, it looks from a distance kind of like a tie, but it's not a tie. It's just a simulation of a tie. Now, maybe someday in my lifetime, we're going to create a way to transmogrify molecules and make duct tape turn into tie, but I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime. And it's the same way I feel about AI. We'll get these glimmers of intelligence that simulate a tie, but it's actually not a tie. It's just duct tape. So really, there's nothing to worry about. Right? Thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was so interesting, and I very much love the tie bit at the end. Very cool,
Yeah,
very cool. And it's also really interesting that you pulled out that DALL-E 2 thing, because that was something that really caught my eye, and it's actually in our current AI magazine, just because the pictures of the space cowboys are so impressive. I just couldn't bear to leave it out. So great minds, great minds. It's always something that interests me. But we have had some questions from the audience, and obviously, the first one that came through is about Siri. Everyone has it, and I almost don't want to say it too loud because my phone's in the same room as me, and something might pick up on that. But where did the name Siri come from?
Oh, wonderful. So we were a small startup. We wanted a name that was human sounding, but not too common. And we wanted it to be short, something you could spell and type and say pretty easily. We had a list of about 20, and Siri moved to the top. And we also wanted to be able to buy the domain name for not too much money. We were a startup. So Siri rose to the top, but for different reasons. So the official meaning of Siri comes from our CEO. He's the CEO, so he gets the official one. He's Norwegian American, and in kind of a Norse goddess metaphor, Siri means beautiful woman who will lead you to victory. So that's the official meaning of Siri. Additionally, there's a few other meanings. I like magic, kind of like that little magic trick I did at the end. And magic is really a secret that I know that other people haven't figured out. Siri means secret in Swahili. So it's kind of a tip of the hat back to when we were a stealth company, when we were a secret, when we were figuring things out that no one else knew. And so that's kind of the origin of the name Siri. Thank you to the audience.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think it's always interesting, especially with something that people will use and say every day, to kind of know that origin is really, really interesting. And you obviously have a lot of knowledge about AI, so I think this one will be a good one for you. So what industries do you think will benefit most from AI?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think really every industry is being transformed. And if you're working in a field and not using AI, you probably should look at it. It's a tool. It's not an all-encompassing thing that's going to, spell the end of the human race. But it is an incredibly important tool. So I've done work in a number of industries, just a few quick examples. So finance, I started a company whose goal was to learn how to trade just by watching the stock market, but do it automatically using traders that were evolved in AI. I've applied it to agriculture. So like agriculture, that's not an AI field. Well, we actually don't understand the best way to generate food. We've made food for 10,000 years. What's the optimal way in terms of lighting and humidity and soil? Working with MIT, we built a food computer that would simulate, you could actually control the parameters and learn things about food growth that we didn't know. So pretty much every industry. I do think health is going to be incredibly important. AI will be incredibly important to this area because there's so much data there that AI can help us understand.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And sadly, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there because it's all we've got time for. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. And I'm sure if we ever have another stage, maybe we'll do a magic one and then you could come and present twice. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. And thanks to the audience for watching. Make sure you stay tuned and check out the rest of our speakers for Tech and AI Live.